We are recording.
Start. I loved this chapter so much.
You did? What was your favorite part?
New metals.
Yes.
Oh, I totally forgot. I had
Vinnovation.
like.
Sorry. I just wanted to say
Vinnovation.
that up. Yeah.
I totally forgot. I totally had this idea in my mind all week of how I was going to start this episode, and I totally forgot to do it. Guys,
Well, you remembered.
Dachshund is my favorite character. I see no way that any other character can top him.
I can see why you said that.
Yeah. But also, Vin's mind. So clever.
Mm-hmm. Very innovative. Sorry, I have to. Innovative. It's cute. Come on.
It is.
Good thinking. She is a very smart girl. We knew this. We enjoy that she's taken it further. She's not just curious. She's like, no, we got to do stuff. We got to get practical here.
Yep. And we get a little bit of insight into the Kelsier religion, finally.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I knew you would like that part.
We get a little bit of young love, too.
Yeah, cute. We get some Orasur, interesting, just more relationship, friendship thing there. The contention between those two, it continues. We get that.
This chapter very much feels like people just not really listening to each other and trying to, but not.
Trying to because that I don't know what. Well, we'll get to the reasons why.
I think
suppose.
so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The intricacies. It's a long chapter.
Yeah. So let's get into it, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
But first, hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. For this particular series, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, That Darn Kitty.
Dorkus and I are both going into the story completely new, with almost no knowledge of the story or world.
Each segment, we intend to cover what happens in each new chapter and discuss our experience along the way.
Hold on to your butts, because this is Ascension Unleashed, a blind read-through, and today we'll be covering Chapter 5.
Chapter 5! And I am the one who betrayed him, for I now know that he must never be allowed to complete his quest.
Hold up. Yours says him.
Yes.
Mine says, and I am the one who betrayed Alendi, for I now know that he must never be allowed to complete his quest.
Well, that's a
we knew
bit
it was
of confirmation. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, hey, just so you know, Alendi.
It's nice for me to have that confirmation, at least.
Yeah.
And it's what I've kind of got working on in my mind right now, between the whispers that Alendi was hearing the eve before the event, telling him that things would be okay. And this is somehow I'm imagining that Quan knew or found out that if Alendi were to go to the Well of Ascension, there might be 1,000 years of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm imagining played out.
So
But
yeah.
because the whispers were telling Alendi that it's okay, someone else will come along, I'm also thinking that what Rashek did had to have happened. Everything, it's the issues with prophecy, everything had to happen as it did so that it could lead to where it's going.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. But what I have a question about is, like, with Quan, how involved was he with not getting Alendi to complete, with getting Alendi not to complete his quest?
I do not know.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, he says, I know that he must never be allowed to complete his quest. That's quite damning if you want to go, whoa, was he part of like this huge betrayal? But then again, and then Rashek just went further and went. But I don't know. I just don't think that Quan would just go and kill Alendi.
There may well have been some Quan speaking into Rashek's ears.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be drama. That would be high drama.
That is high drama, because it's like he has to overcome whatever attachment he feels to Alendi and just be like, listen, no, we can't. Like, I've tried to convince him that this is the wrong thing to do, but it didn't work. So now I have to take matters into my own hands.
It's interesting. I had imagined up until this point something akin to an assassination attempt. Like maybe he tried to kill Alendi, failed, and fled. But if Quan were trying some sort of full-on coup or heretical
Revolt.
revolt, yeah, that I see no reason why it couldn't be that either. I'm gonna contemplate that for a while.
Contemplate. Yeah, and that is all from a 2-line epigraph. We have many questions all the time.
Yep. Vin could see signs of anxiety reflected in the city. Workers milled anxiously and markets bustled with an edge of concern, showing the same apprehension one might see in a cornered rodent, frightened but not sure what to do, doomed with nowhere to run. Many had left the city during the last year, noblemen fleeing, merchants seeking some other place of business, yet at the same time the city had swelled with an influx of ska. They had heard of Ellen's proclamation of freedom and had come with optimism, or at least as much optimism as an overworked, underfed, repeatedly beaten populace could manage. And so, despite predictions that Luthadel would soon fall, despite whispers that its army was small and weak, the people had stayed, worked, lived, just as they always had. The life of a ska had never been very certain. So it's known that this is the place of ska reprieve. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand some people finding optimism and being like, this has never happened before. We have to take this opportunity, see what it's like, and go and be part of this new world, however it looks. And again, we get back to that theme of like freedom is scary. It's got responsibility attached to it now, but it's freedom. It's still better than slavery.
Yep. It was still strange for Vin to see the market so busy. She walked down Kenton Street wearing her customary trousers and buttoned shirt, thinking about the time when she'd visited the street during the days before the collapse. It had been the quiet home of some exclusive tailoring shops. When Ellen had abolished the restrictions on ska merchants, Kenton Street had changed. The thoroughfare had blossomed into a wild bazaar of shops, pushcarts, and tents in order to target the newly empowered and newly waged ska workers. Shop owners had altered their selling methods, where once they had coaxed with rich window displays, they now called and demanded using criers, salesmen, and even jugglers to try to attract trade. It's a bazaar.
It's very alive. It's very noisy. So it's that is freedom. Also very messy. So you can see that's how it would go. I'm happy for it. No, I'm glad that the people took commerce or whatever just took over. Like it was just like, no, fine, cool. They took the opportunity. Yeah.
I'm worried that the ska might be underpaid. Like it's not totally uncommon that serfdom, it's like slavery in all but name, right?
Yeah, it's like, look, here we go. You've never had a wage at all, but so I can just give you something.
Right. Then again, there's lots of talk in this chapter about noblemen leaving the city and ska coming to the city. So any degree of ska taking advantage of other ska in the wage department is a different kind of story, if that makes sense, rather than noblemen taking advantage of ska.
Yeah. But that what I did underline with newly waged ska, it's like, well, that is a huge economic change.
Yeah.
That's insanely
big economic boost, hopefully.
Yeah. So you're hoping. So it's that means more in circulation, but you do have to wonder how it's affecting everything. You want to know how that's actually working out. How are they all managing now? Because now costs are higher, but at the same time, like you said, how much higher if you really are? It's the first time you've paid anyone, so is it really fair?
Yeah, but if this is setting up that Luthadel is a little bit of an economic powerhouse right now,
Mm,
that is a degree of strength that they might have over other kingdoms.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And the Scar do need to be enticed to join this. They are still part of this, like, because the rest of the kingdom is still on the old system, basically. All of the other
Mm-hmm.
kingdoms are like, so this is the land of opportunity for them. Yes, it's small, much smaller compared to everything else, but it's the only choice they have. So hopefully that's a benefit for Elend, the fact that he's on the good side.
Yeah. The street was so busy that Finn usually avoided it, and this day was worse than most. The arrival of the army had sparked a last-minute flurry of buying and selling, the people trying to get ready for whatever was to come. There was a grim tone to the atmosphere. Fewer street performers, more yelling. Elend had ordered all 8 city gates barred, so flight was no longer an option. Vin wondered how many of the people regretted their decision to stay. She walked with a businesslike step, hands clasped to keep the nervousness out of her posture. Even as an urchin on the streets of a dozen different cities, she hadn't liked crowds. It was hard to keep track of so many people, hard to focus with so much going on. As a child, she'd stayed near the edges of crowds, hiding, venturing out to snatch the occasional fallen coin or ignored bit of food. She was different now. She forced herself to walk with a straight back and kept her eyes from glancing down or looking for places to hide. She was getting so much better, but seeing the crowds reminded her of what she had once been, what she would always, at least in part, still be. As if in response to her thoughts, a pair of street urchins scampered through the throng, a large man in a baker's apron screaming at them. Ellen's new world still had urchins. In fact, as she considered it, paying the Ska population probably made for a far better street life. There were more pockets to pick, more people to distract the shop owners, more scraps to go around, and more hands to feed the beggars.
Yeah, more effects. So even, yeah, okay, it hasn't eliminated poor people, hasn't eliminated urchins. It's made it a little bit better for them though. And she still can still think like one. She's like, okay, what does this mean for an urchin? An urchin. An urchin, because they're merchants of the street. Yeah.
There's
Um
also a little bit of romanticizing of the urchins here, I think, yeah?
mhm. Yeah.
One
I mean
jump
it's
ahead of the breadline.
yeah, it is pretty sad. Are you're talking about the I wonder if there is a boo. There's not. They haven't mentioned any monkeys. Sorry. Um, you did an Aladdin reference there, yes.
Yes.
Hmm. Okay,
For a second
just
there, I wasn't sure you got it until you said Abu. So,
hmm.
yay.
I was trying to show that I'd gotten it. I'm like, hey, yeah, find a way to tell a show. But anyway, I think that my comments about urchins come later. Sorry, let's continue.
Cool. It was difficult to reconcile her childhood with such a life. To her, a child on the street was someone who learned to be quiet and hide, someone who went out at night to search through garbage. Only the most brave of urchins had dared cut purses. Ska lives had been worthless to many noblemen. During her childhood, Vin had known several urchins who had been killed or maimed by passing noblemen who found them offensive. Ellen's laws might not have eliminated the poor, something he so wanted to do, but he had improved the lives of even the street urchins. For that, among other things, she loved him.
Oh yeah, that was another comment I just wanted to make. She has in several of these chapters calls it Ellen's world, Ellen's kingdom, Ellen's new world. She's not really part of it. I don't know. She doesn't put herself in it. She's just like it's his. And yes, I love him. It's like, yeah, but what about you then? The new world. What about calling it the new world? Yeah, what is it to you?
That's a wonderful insight, and
Mm,
I think it'll connect to a thought I had regarding the dress that she ends up looking at.
mhm.
But we'll get to that one.
Yeah.
There were still some noblemen in the crowd, men who had been persuaded by Elend or circumstances that their fortunes would be safer in the city than without. They were desperate, weak, or adventuresome. Finn watched one man pass, surrounded by a group of guards. He didn't give her a second glance. To him, her simple clothing was reason enough to ignore her. Vin turned away, and the shop at the side of the street drew her attention despite herself. It contained ball gowns. Inside, Dressing dummies stood posed in majestic gowns, the type worn by noble women at balls. Finn gazed at the garments, with their tight waists and flaring, bell-like skirts. She could almost imagine herself at a ball, soft music in the background, tables draped in perfect white, Ellen standing up on his balcony leafing through a book.
Wow. Okay, this is the biggest change that I've seen between our editions.
Oh?
Okay. Wow. Because mine goes, so there's still some noblemen in the crowd, men persuaded Ellen's circumstances, no noble woman would dress as she did. And then she goes, "Is that what I am?" She wondered, pausing beside a shop window, looking over the books inside. So she talks about there's a whole thing about books, the sale of which had always been a small but profitable market for the idle imperial nobility. She also used the glass to reflection to make certain no one snuck up behind her. So does your book by any chance go to the bookstore after?
So after Ellen standing up on his balcony leafing through a book, is that what I am now, she wondered? Am I a noblewoman? It could be argued that she was noble simply by association. The king loved her, had
Yeah.
asked her to marry him.
But she's having this thought in my book. She's having this thought looking at books. Then she turns. She pretended not to be the girl who had grown up starving on the streets, a girl who had been beaten far more often than she had been befriended. Vin sighed, turning from the window. The next shop, however, drew her attention despite herself. It contained ball gowns. So mine basically only gets ball gowns like on the next page. This is one of the biggest. I mean, we have it's a structural change. I mean, there's no books even.
Neat.
Wow. And no mention of, okay, so this part, is that what I am? You've got that there, right?
Correct.
Is there, the king himself loved her, had asked her to marry him, and she had been trained by the survivor of Hathson. Do you have that discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's just go with yours. I'll try and see, just you tell me where my line is. I don't know.
Okay.
Because it is quite a mix-up.
There were still some noblemen in the crowd, men who had been persuaded by Ellen or circumstances that their fortunes would be safer in the city than without. They were desperate, weak, or adventuresome. Vin watched one man pass surrounded by a group of guards. He didn't give her a second glance. To him, her simple clothing was reason enough to ignore her. Vin turned away, and the shop at the side of the street drew her attention despite herself. It contained ball gowns. Inside, dressing dummies stood posed in majestic gowns, the type worn by noble women at balls. Vin gazed at the garments with their tight waists and flaring, bell-like skirts. She could almost imagine herself at a ball, soft music in the background, tables draped in perfect white. Ellen standing up on his balcony, leafing through a book.
Is that what I am now? Am I a noblewoman?
It could be argued that she was noble simply by association. The king loved her, had asked her to marry him, and she had been trained by the survivor of Hathson. Indeed, her father had been noble, though her mother had been Ska. Looking at her reflection in the shop's glass, Vin reached up and fingered the simple bronze earring that was the only thing she had as a memento of mother. So,
Bronze.
Yeah. So is this two things? Is that the first time we've heard that the earring is bronze?
I feel like it is. Why do we both go, well, we know what it is? Like,
right. Okay. So what does that mean?
or we're being reminded of the bronzeness of it. And what does that mean? Is it a metal mind? Because Vin somehow has some sort of you're gonna have to chime in because of my brain fog. She has ferrochemy. There you go.
That's
so maybe
one of our working theories.
Mm-hmm.
But so bronze is the metal that reveals allomancy.
Mm-hmm.
It's an internal mental pushing metal. Yes, I pulled out the first book so I could remind myself specifically. I want to know what literary shenanigans Brandon Sanderson is up to by choosing to have the earring be bronze, is what I'm getting at. But it's not necessarily my forte.
Well, all I've put in the theory log is bronze earring significance.
Same.
And another thing, what was I?
It could be
about?
Maybe it's like if it's the revealing metal, maybe it's signifying that she is special. There is something special here to be revealed, which I think we already know. But
yeah, Well, we
Maybe
know
that's
we're waiting for it.
yeah. So maybe that's something. The other thing that I noted was the only thing she had as a memento of mother, not
Mm,
of her mother, but of mother. It's
yeah.
the first time
It,
she has closed
mm.
that gap, so to speak.
Yes, in my book as well, it's the same. So I mean that's you would think that's like considering how radically they changed the structure of things. I mean, one of the things it mentioned that she looked in your book. It mentions she looks in the reflection of the window, and one of the things that in my book he does with that reflection mention is she still used the reflection to see if anyone was behind her. So he uses that to just remind us of her trauma and her her hyper awareness, but he just didn't do it with that. But then here, this was something that was kept the same. The capitalization and the use of mother
Mhm.
like that. It was like, no, that is a definite note that he wants to hit.
Agreed.
So cool.
It wasn't much, but then Vin wasn't sure she wanted to think about her mother. The woman had, after all, tried to kill her. In fact, she had killed Vin's full sister. Only the actions of Reen, Vin's half-brother, had saved her. He had pulled her, bloody, from the arms of a woman who had shoved the earring into Vin's left ear moments before.
Left ear. Okay, you've got left ear. Like I didn't even know which ear it was. I do want to. I'm putting it in left ear significance. Because why are you telling me that?
It also makes me think of the epigraphs from the first book, Alendi
Mhm.
wearing the piercings.
Yes, of
Uh,
the yes.
yeah, so
That's why. Exactly. That's exactly why I think that I'm like, why are you making us know which one? Like, I'm sure we've have prior knowledge of which ear it's in. I'm sorry, but I am ill, so my brain is foggy. But yeah, that he's making sure there that we know it's the left ear in this book.
right. And or correct, rather. Haha.
Yeah.
This also had me thinking about a slightly different topic. I think I had likened these mist creatures to something that is piercing the veil. The
Mhm.
veil meaning death, right? Or to the afterlife of some kind. I wondered this week if snapping is literally characters dying and coming
Mm.
back to life, reanimating, so to speak.
Wow. Okay. I can see your use of it. Like it's kind of like a sort of piercing the veil and coming back, like kind of like with Harry Potter having seen death somehow.
Hmm.
You could see those creatures. So that's what I would do. What I would think of it. Not so much that they wholly die and come back to life, reanimate. I think it's more like a spiritual death. Something like they see they die. I can see that mechanism, but not physically.
Okay.
In my
Interesting.
opinion.
Yet Vin kept it, as a reminder of sorts. The truth was she didn't feel like a noblewoman. At times she thought she had more in common with her insane mother than she did with the aristocracy of Ellen's world. The balls and parties she had attended before the collapse, they had been a charade, a dreamlike memory. They had no place in this world of crumbling governments and nightly assassinations. Plus, Vin's part in the balls, pretending to be the girl Valette Renault, had always been a sham. She pretended still. Pretended not to be the urchin who had grown up starving on the streets, a girl who had been beaten far more often than she had been befriended. Yet Vin lingered before the shop window, held almost as if she were metal being pulled by those beautiful gowns. The shop was empty of patrons, few thought of dresses on the eve of an invasion, and neither should she. Besides, Vin couldn't justify such luxury. It had been different when she'd spent Kelsier's money, but now she spent Ellen's, and his money was the kingdom's. Vin sighed, turning from the gowns and walking back out into the flow of people.
Those aren't me anymore. The lad is useless to Ellen. He needs a mistborn, not an uncomfortable girl in a gown that she doesn't quite fill.
Disagree, Vin. A marriage with a ska queen
It works
would
very
be,
well.
yes, it works very well. We especially learn from Doxson in this chapter that
Mm-hmm.
there is a low level of disgruntlement among many, not many, but if he's a sort of a representative of the opinion that others might hold, it would be a very good thing. It would instill confidence in the populace to bring back some normalcy, some revelry. Yeah,
Some
I think
trust.
there's a role for it.
Yeah.
Some trust, yes.
To show that, no, really, Scar are accepted. It's not just for show. People would obviously doubt the truth of their love and all of that, but yeah, it needs to be there on show. It would work.
Yeah.
We're thinking very Game of Thronesy, and she's like,
yeah.
no.
Her wounds from the night before, now firm bruises, were a reminder of her place. They were healing well. She'd been burning pewter heavily all day, but she'd be stiff for a while yet. Vin quickened her pace, heading for the livestock pens. As she walked, she caught sight of someone tailing her. Well, perhaps tailing was too generous a word. The man certainly wasn't doing a very good job of going unnoticed. He was balding on top, but wore the sides of his hair long. He wore a simple Skaz smock, a single-piece tanned garment that was stained dark with ash.
Great.
There was another reason she avoided the market, or any place where crowds of Ska gathered. Now, it's interesting because when I was first reading through this, I was thinking, is this dangerous? Is this an assassination attempt again? I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be at this point.
No, at this point, I was, because of the way that she was acting, she wasn't as like in action as I would have expected her. I was curious about it. I wasn't worried about it yet, because I was like, I took on Vin's emotion, just like, oh great, I'm getting followed, instead of I'm getting followed. Yeah.
Or I even thought spy briefly, I think, as well. There was another reason she avoided the market, or any place where crowds of Ska gathered. She sped up again, but the man hurried as well. His awkward movements gained attention, but instead of cursing him, most people paused reverently. Soon others joined him, and Vin had a small crowd trailing her. A part of her wanted to slap down a coin and shoot away.
Yes. Use allomancy in the daylight. That'll make you inconspicuous.
So sighing, she turned to confront the group. None of them looked particularly threatening. The men wore trousers and dull shirts. The women wore one-piece utilitarian dresses. Several more men wore ash-covered smocks. Priests of the survivor. I thought cool, but oh no, but cool.
I was like, okay, yeah. They are actually. My thought was, yay, Dorkus gets his religion discussion today.
Lady Air, one of them said, approaching and falling to his knees.
Don't call me that.
Please, we need direction. We have cast off the Lord Ruler. What do we do now? Okay, Lady Air. Isn't there a Sanderson book called Heir of the Survivor?
I don't know.
I think there might be. I don't remember specifically.
There's so many books by this man. I don't know.
I feel like there might be.
I'm a Sanderson noob, so. But if you say there is one, then I'm more of a noob than you.
Vin took a step backward. Kelsier had known what he was doing when he had built up the Ska's faith in him, then had died a martyr to turn them in rage against the final empire. But what he thought... Go on.
Mine said, had Kelsier understood what he was doing, he had built the Ska's faith in him. Like, she's asking the question, so it's like, she's already assigned it to him. She's like, no, he understood what he was doing.
Wow. Interesting, because Vin has some very nihilistic interpretations of who Kelsier is in this chapter.
Yeah.
Mine, just as a statement, skews more into that nihilistic thing, whereas yours, where it's a question, is less so.
Yeah, it's a question. That's it. It gives you this kind of, she has both feelings, both sides of this thing. She feels like she's irritated with him for not having understood, but then she also is like, maybe he didn't understand. Yeah, there's more confusion in my book.
Interesting. Kelsier had known what he was doing when he had built up the Ska's faith in him, then had died a martyr to turn them in rage against the final empire. But what had he thought would happen after that? Could he have foreseen the Church of the Survivor? Had he known that they would replace the Lord Ruler with Kelsier himself as God? The problem was, Kelsier had left his followers with no doctrine. His only goal had been to defeat the Lord Ruler, partially to get his revenge, partially to seal his legacy, and partially, Vin hoped, because he had wanted to free the Ska.
How did you feel about that Vin hoped because he wanted to free the Ska?
Well, as I had just said,
Mm-hmm.
Vin seems to have very nihilistic opinions of Kelsier this chapter, and I find those opinions a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
And like we said, I think last week, Vin seems to be going on a depression journey, and I think many of her thoughts about Kelsier are informed by that state of being. I don't want her to think badly about Kelsier.
I don't want her to like worship him either, but
No,
it
he wasn't
it did,
perfect.
yeah, but it did seem like Vin hoped because he had wanted to free that. That's where I get that. It's the same in my book because he wanted to free the Ska. It's like that. Don't put that into question, Vin. It's not. You can question maybe the proportions of all those factors, but don't come in and say he didn't. Like because you're bringing that into question by saying Vin hoped.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It's just the context. It's how her brain it's just gone into this dark place.
She's still coping. She's still mourning. She's angry.
Yeah.
But now what? These people must feel as she did, set adrift with no light to guide them. Finn could not be that light.
I'm not Kelsier,
she said quietly, taking another step backward. We know! You're his heir! He passed on, and this time you survived!
Please!
A woman said, stepping forward, holding a young child in her arms.
Lady Heir, if the hand that struck down the Lord Ruler could touch my child...
Vin tried to back away further, but realized she was up against another crowd of people. The woman stepped closer, and Vin finally raised an uncertain hand to the baby's forehead.
Thank you.
You'll protect us, won't you, Lady Heir? Asked a young man, no older than Elend, with a dirty face but honest eyes. The priests say that you'll stop that army out there, that its soldiers won't be able to enter the city while you're here. That was too much for her. Vin mumbled a half-hearted response, but turned and pushed her way through the crowd. The group of believers didn't follow her, fortunately. I'm glad they didn't follow her, because I was feeling a little claustrophobic from all of that.
Right? Oh, she was really overwhelmed, and it's just like, she gonna have to punch them out the way? So, yeah, good.
By the time she slowed, she was breathing deeply, though not from exertion. She moved into an alley between two shops, standing in the shade, wrapping her arms around herself. She had spent her life learning to remain unnoticed, to be quiet and unimportant. Now she could be none of those things. What did the people expect of her? Did they really think she could stop an army by herself? That was one lesson she'd learned very early into her training. Mistborn weren't invincible. 1 man she could kill. 10 men could give her trouble. An army. Vin took a few calming breaths. Eventually she moved back out onto the busy street. She was near her destination now. A small, open-sided tent surrounded by 4 pens. The merchant lounged by it, a scruffy man who had hair on only half of his head, the right half. Vin stood there for a moment, trying to decide if the odd hairstyle was due to disease, injury, or preference.
Why on earth, I underlined this, I was like, why on earth what shenanigans, if we're going to just call back to it, is Branderson up to by giving us this haircut to think about? Like, I'm skeptical. Like, if I saw this in a visual medium, I'd be like, why? Like, this person's going to recur. That's why I need to look at that.
Well, it's so funny you say that. My understanding regarding Hoyd is that he's a character that shows up in every book. He's the Stan Lee of the Cosmere, is how I've heard it. And I've been told that with regards to this specific book, you only know it if you actually look it up online. So I did wonder to myself, is this Hoyd? Hoyd Watch, episode 1. So I feel like we both sensed some degree of importance out of this guy.
Half-haired dog salesman. I mean, he's out of work now.
And one of my favorite things about this section, though, is when I was reading through it, I sort of jumped the gun on what was actually going to happen with it.
Okay.
Which is to say, she's getting a dog with the intention of giving it to Orasur, right? I had already thought that the dog would be Orasur. I thought she was going to pick up Orasur, essentially.
Oh, she had already done that. Okay.
Yeah, or more specifically, he had already done that. And that was what I was thinking as the scene was developing. So I got...
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I
so
was thinking of how that would play in your head. She punches the dog. Okay.
Oh, man. So it was neat for me when we found out that I was more or less right. I was just ahead of the game. So that was exciting for me. Anyway, the man perked up when he saw her at the edge of his pens. He brushed himself off, tossing up a small amount of dust. Then he sauntered over to her, smiling with what teeth he still had, acting as if he hadn't heard, or didn't care, that there was an army right outside. Ah, young lady, looking for a pup? I've got some wee scamps that any girl is sure to love. Here, let me grab one. You'll agree? It's the cutest thing you ever seen. Vin folded her arms as the man reached down to grab a puppy from one of the pens.
Actually, I was looking for a wolfhound.
Wolfhound, miss? 'Tis not a pet for a girl like you. Mean brutes, those. Let me find you a nice bobby. Nice dogs, those. Smart, too.
No, you will bring me a wolfhound.
The man looked up at her and scratched himself in several undignified places. Well, I guess I can say. He wandered toward the pen farthest from the street. Vin waited quietly, nose turned down at the smell as the merchant yelled at a few of his animals, selecting an appropriate one. Eventually, he pulled a leashed dog up to Vin. It was a wolfhound, if a small one, but it had sweet, docile eyes and an obviously pleasant temperament. The runt of the litter. A good animal for a young girl, I say. Will probably make an excellent hunter, too. These wolfhounds, they can smell better than any beast you've seen. Vin looked down at the dog's panting face. It almost seemed to be smiling at her.
Oh, for the Lord Ruler's sake,
she snapped, pushing past the dog and master, stalking toward the back pens. Young lady? Vin scanned the wolfhounds. Near the back, she spotted a massive black and gray beast. It was chained to a post, and it regarded her defiantly, a low growl rising in its throat. It was that word, defiantly, that made me think, this is Orasur.
Okay. I was too busy just being like, okay, it's a dog. And she's looking for a certain temperament. How much for that one at the back?
That? Good lady, that's a watch-based. It's meant to be set loose on a large grounds to attack anyone who enters. It's one of the meanest things you'll ever see.
Perfect.
Good lady, I couldn't possibly sell you that beast. Not possibly at all. Why, I bet he weighs half again as much as you do. Vin nodded, then pulled open the pen gate and strode in. The merchant cried out, but Vin walked right up to the wolfhound. He began to bark wildly at her, frothing.
Sorry about this.
Then, burning pewter, she ducked in and slammed her fist into the animal's head. The animal froze, wobbled, then fell unconscious in the dirt. The merchant pulled up short beside her, his mouth open.
Leash.
He gave her one. She used it to tie the wolfhound's feet together, and then, with a flare of pewter, she threw the animal over her shoulders. She cringed only slightly at the pain in her side.
This thing better not get drool on my shirt,
she thought, handing the merchant some coins and walking back toward the palace. She just killed a dog!
Okay, look, it was unconscious, okay? She that's what I told myself. And then eventually later on, I'm like, oh my God, Vin. But yeah, she has to keep it fresh, I suppose. She's also trying to keep it as fresh as possible. So it's unconscious. It's not exactly dead. She didn't say dead. Okay. And
fair, but
yeah,
she would rather kill a dog for this purpose than use the corpse of someone that tried to kill her.
Yeah, exactly. She's weird. I'm sorry. I'm not with her on this moral high ground that she seems to be taking. She thinks she's taking. Also, how did this play in your head? Because you were thinking that was Orasur, like, or were you just? It was still not sure yet.
When she knocked him out, I was like, okay, no, that's not Orasur.
That wouldn't make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, you could headcanon it and be like, okay, you're done spying as a dog. I'm gonna kill you now. But you know what? It's still, yeah. I was just like, what's with this? This is not a good way to. I should have known by the time she knocked the dog out what she was gonna do. But I guess I was just reading, and I was just like, just tell me the story. I'm not thinking about anything, and just show me what you plan to do. Then, yeah, just she hit him in the head. I was like, that's not a good way to transport this animal. Jeez. Okay. Poor Paparoo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Vin slammed the unconscious wolfhound to the floor. The guards had given her some strange looks as she entered the palace, but she was getting used to those. She brushed off her hands. What is that? Orasur asked. He'd made it back to her rooms at the palace, but his current body was obviously unusable. To even keep the skeleton together, he'd needed to form muscles in places that men didn't normally have them, and while he'd healed his wounds, his body looked unnatural. He still wore the blood-stained clothing from the night before.
So, great healing ability there. Cool. You can just heal
Yes,
him.
neat.
So, like, if something not so major happens, it's okay. You can heal it up. But when bones are broken and things like that, yeah, it's got to add muscles and stuff around. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
This is your new body. Sorry. God, Vin. God. I don't know. I don't feel this that she feels for him, but okay.
No, she doesn't. That, mistress, that is a dog.
Yes.
I am a man.
You're a conjurer. You can imitate flesh and muscle. What about fur?
I cannot imitate it, though I can use the beast's own fur like I use its bones. But surely there is...
I'm not going to kill for you, Condra. And even if I did kill someone, I wouldn't let you eat them. Plus, this will be more inconspicuous. People will begin to talk if I keep replacing my stewards with unknown men. I've been telling people for months that I was thinking of dismissing you. Well, I'll tell them that I finally did. Nobody will think to realize that my new pet hound is actually my Condra.
Interesting. I have, in fact, my Condra.
Actually.
Neat. I love Vin's innovation.
Vinovation, hello. But innovation, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Look, I love it, but also I feel bad for Orasur because it's just like this way he can't talk to her.
He has some degree of dignity.
Yes. She's just like, no, you know what? You're a beast. So be a beast.
And there is that line, I am a man. What does it mean for a Condra to say, I am a man?
Interesting. Yes, indeed. Were they ever men?
Or do they want to be men?
Yeah. She's like, you're a Condra, sorry. So she's decided, whatever that means, there is no manness in you. See, that there is no humanity in him. She does not see that. And I'm finding it difficult. Like, look, her instinct's probably right, but I don't know. I'm feeling bad for him.
I am too.
And yeah, well, I guess maybe she could. That's why she couldn't have she wants it to be a tough dog, cool. But I mean, you saw how easily you can take out the dog. It's not like an Alamancer dog. But also, the nice smiling looking one, she hates it because she's like, I don't want Orasur to look that way. He's got to look ugly and mean because that's what I think he is. She can't have him looking nice and cute and smiling.
See, I thought this was just her being practical, wanting something that could do some damage if it had to.
Both. I think it's both. I'm sorry. I think it's both because also that's also what really upset her is that it looked like it was smiling at her. This poor Paparoo. Oh, yeah. There's the other pups that back at the thing. Well, at least you know what? At least that dog lived. This one's gonna have to become Orasur. Shame.
She turned, nodding toward the unconscious animal.
This will be very useful. People pay less attention to hounds than they do to humans, and so you'll be able to listen in on conversations.
I will not do this thing easily. You will need to compel me by virtue of the contract.
Fine, you're commanded. How long will it take?
An ordinary body only takes a few hours. This could take longer. Getting that much fur to look right will be challenging.
Get started then.
Vin said, turning toward the door. On her way, she noticed a package sitting on her desk. She frowned, walking over and taking off the lid. A note sat inside. Lady Vin, here is the next alloy you requested. Aluminum is very difficult to acquire, but when a noble family recently left the city, I was able to buy some of their dining ware. I do not know if this one will work, but I believe it worth a try. I've mixed the aluminum with 4% copper and found the outcome quite promising. I have read of this composition. It is called duralumin. Your servant, Tarion. So much is happening this chapter.
Yeah.
And I
So
love that she's
Yeah.
searching for new metals.
Yeah, she's busy. She's not wasting her time just sitting, being a bodyguard. She thinks she is, but that's not what she's doing.
Yep.
She's being a pioneer, man.
Yes. And oh man, do I have theories about what it does, but I'll wait until
We'll
we
get
know
there.
whether or not it works before we delve into that. But
Mm-hmm.
oh, she is just Vin, her mind, her creativity, her instinct. She is a special girl.
Mm-hmm. She is very likable, and you're just excited for what she's going to do next.
Vin smiled, setting aside the note and removing the rest of the box's contents. A small pouch of metal dust and a thin silvery bar, both presumably of this duralumin metal. Tarion was a master allomantic metallurgist, though not an allomancer himself. He had been mixing alloys and creating dusts for Mistborn and Mistings for most of his life. Vin pocketed both pouch and bar, then turned toward Orasur. The Khandra regarded her with a flat expression.
This came for me today.
Yes, mistress. A few hours ago.
And you didn't tell me.
I'm sorry, mistress, but you did not command me to tell you if packages arrived.
Whoa. This is what I mean by their relationship. Just he's maliciously compliant.
Malicious? Is obstinacy malicious?
She's like, listen, yeah, he's kind of like he's
Defiant.
mean. He's defiant, yeah. He is trying to goad her. I'm telling you, he's just like, listen, you didn't tell me, so that's just how it feels.
Vin ground her teeth. He knew how anxiously she'd been waiting for another alloy from Tarion. All of the previous aluminum alloys they'd tried had turned out to be duds. It bothered her to know that there was another allomantic metal out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. She wouldn't be satisfied until she found it. Orasur sat where he was, bland expression on his face, unconscious wolfhound on the floor in front of him.
Just get to work on that body.
Interesting, mine says on that hound, Vin said, spinning and leaving the room to search for Elend. Good section.
Mm-hmm. Innovation and character interplay between Orasur and Vin. Let's go.
Vin finally found Elend in his study, going over some ledgers with a familiar figure.
Dogs!
He'd retired to his room soon after his arrival the day before, and she hadn't seen much of him. Doxson looked up and smiled. Stocky without being fat, he had short dark hair and still wore his customary half-beard. Hello, Vin!
How was Terrace?
Cold. I'm glad to be back, though I wish I hadn't arrived to find that army here. He was in Terrace. What does that mean?
What were you doing there?
Perhaps meeting with the Terrace keepers?
Let's see. Well, we don't see.
We don't see, but maybe like inviting them to come share their knowledge with his people. In any case, we're glad you've returned, Doxson. The kingdom practically fell apart without you. That hardly seems the case, Doxson said, closing his ledger and setting it on the stack. All things, and armies considered, it looks like the royal bureaucracy held together fairly well in my absence. You hardly need me anymore. Nonsense, Elend said. Vin leaned against the door, eyeing the two men as they continued their discussion. They maintained their air of forced joviality. Both were dedicated to making the new kingdom work, even if it meant pretending that they liked each other. Doxson pointed at places in the ledgers, talking about finances and what he'd discovered in the outlying villages under Elend's control. So Doxson and Elend don't like each other. Interesting.
Which I'm sure you were happy to hear.
For the most part, when we get to theorizing why, yes, very happy to hear.
Yeah, I knew you would be excited. Well, not excited. I knew you would be like, yeah, like, okay, I'm not the only one kind of thing.
I want them to get along, but frankly, Dachshund is right. Although I wonder if Dachshund would be warmer if Vin accepted the marriage proposal.
I don't think so. I don't think that much. Maybe he would put more effort into being nice, but it would still be difficult for him.
Yeah. Vin sighed, glancing across the room. Sunlight streamed through the room's stained glass rose window, throwing colors across the ledgers and table. Even now, Vin still wasn't accustomed to the casual opulence of a noble keep. The window, red and lavender, was a thing of intricate beauty, yet noblemen apparently found its like so commonplace that they had put this one in the keep's back rooms, in the small chamber that Elend now used as his study. As one might expect, the room was piled with stacks of books. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, but they were no match for the sheer volume of Ellen's growing collection. She'd never cared much for Ellen's taste in books. They were mostly political or historical works, things with topics as musty as their aged pages. Many of them had once been forbidden by the Steel Ministry, but somehow the old philosophers could make even salacious topics seem boring.
So, Vin.
Yes. Hopefully that means those books aren't banned anymore.
Yeah, definitely not. I was gonna say, but who can read? But some Scott did read, and you would just want more readers. I would say. I'll stick to that kind of point.
What are Luthadel literacy rates?
Yeah, exactly. That's my platform.
Anyway, I have some things to do before your speech tomorrow, Your Majesty. Did Ham say there's a city defense meeting that evening as well? Assuming I can get the assembly to agree not to hand the city over to my father, we'll need to come up with a strategy to deal with his army. I'll send someone for you tomorrow night. Okay, quick question, because I don't remember if we discussed it up until this point, but do you think that Ellen's speech will be successful?
I hope so. That's all I can tell you. I don't know about thinking it'll be successful.
My prediction is, and add it to our list, is that no, it will not be successful. They will want to give over control of the city, and Elend and the crew will have to find a creative solution to solving the problem before it happens.
Okay. I don't want that problem because I'm just like, how on earth would they do that? So,
I don't disagree.
That's why I'll just be like, I want it to work. So I don't know.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
It'll be
I don't think it'll be fine. Good, Dachshund said. With that, he nodded to Elend, winked at Finn, then made his way from the cluttered room. As Dachshund shut the door, Elend sighed, then relaxed back in his oversized plush chair.
He really is a good man, Elend.
Oh, I realize he is. Being a good man doesn't always make one likable. Okay, now it's important to note, Dachshund is a good man. The whole Elend is a good man. We want a good man as king. Should have had President Dachshund, damn it.
Right? So, yeah, and I don't think he would be like, you need to refer to me as your majesty or your excellency or whatever. Just no.
And I don't even think that Dachshund necessarily wanted to be king, but he certainly is correct in thinking that a Ska should be king, and he'd have been a bureaucratic king. He's perfect for the role.
Yeah, that's a thing though. He might be too stuck in the details to be performative and leadership, based. So he might be a good VP, if you know what I'm saying, or a hand of the king kind of thing. So I don't know.
All right.
He's nice too. Sturdy, calm, stable. The crew relied on him.
Even though Dachshund wasn't an Allomancer, he had been Kelsier's right-hand man. He doesn't like me, Vin. It's very hard to get along with someone who looks at me like that.
You're not giving him a fair chance,
Vin complained, stopping beside Ellen's chair. He looked up at her, smiling wanly, his vest unbuttoned, his hair an absolute mess. He said, idly taking her hand. I really like that shirt. Red looks good on you. Vin rolled her eyes, letting him gently pull her into the chair and kiss her. There was a passion to the kiss, a need, perhaps, for something stable. Vin responded, feeling herself relax as she pressed against him. A few minutes later, she sighed, feeling much better, snuggled into the chair beside him. He held her close, leaning the chair back into the window's sunlight. Young love!
Yeah, there we go. We get the little loves. Yeah.
It also reminds me that they are, in fact, young.
Yeah. Exactly. There's another thing like this very young king over here. How's that going? Oh, look, we don't want an old guy, but, a dachshund-aged king. Yeah.
He smiled and looked at her. That's a new perfume you're wearing? Vin
Pure
snorted.
fume, huh? Sorry. Sorry, the way that you said it was so funny.
Thank you. That was my intention. Vin snorted, putting her head against his chest.
It's not perfume, Ellen. It's a dog.
Ah, good. I was worried that you'd departed from your senses. Now, is there any particular reason why you smell like dog?
I went to the market and bought one, then carried it back and fed it to Arasur, so it can be his new body.
Ellen's eyes widened. Why, Vin, that's brilliant! Nobody will suspect a dog to be a spy. I wonder if anyone's ever thought of that before.
Someone must have. I mean, it makes such sense. I suspect those who thought of it, however, didn't share the knowledge.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But also don't underestimate your creativity, Vin.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, I agree. Don't underestimate it, but now think, okay, it's possible that animals are watching.
Yes. Good point, Ellen said, leaning back, yet from as close as they were, she could still feel a tension in him.
Tomorrow's speech. He's worried about it.
I must say that I find it a bit disappointing that you're not wearing dog-scented perfume. With your social station, I could see some of the local noblewomen trying to imitate you. That could be amusing indeed. She leaned up, looking at his smirking face.
You know, Ellen, sometimes it's bloody difficult to tell whether you're teasing or when you're just being dense.
That makes me more mysterious, right?
Something like that,
She said, snuggling up against him again. Now, see, you don't understand how clever that is of me. If people can't tell when I'm being an idiot and when I'm being a genius, perhaps they'll assume my blunders are brilliant political maneuverings.
As long as they don't mistake your actual brilliant moves for blunders.
That shouldn't be difficult. I fear I have few enough of those for people to mistake. I like this banter. This was fun.
Yeah, it's cute. And it is a way for... I'm just saying, like, he is still getting his worries across through his humor. He doesn't have to break down into pieces. He is still expressing himself, though. Thinly veiled through humor, but anyway.
Yeah. At the edge in his voice, Vin looked up with concern. He smiled, shifting the topic. So, Orasur the dog. Will he still be able to go out with you at nights?
I guess. I wasn't really planning on bringing him for a while.
I'd like it if you did take him. I worry about you out there every night, pushing yourself so hard.
I can handle it. Someone needs to watch over you.
Yes, but who watches over you?
Kelsia.
She thinks this to herself, though.
Yeah.
For those listening, that was a thought.
The way it came across to me was so bam in your face, and I forgot. Yeah, I have to make it sound a bit more thoughty.
Even now, that was still her immediate reaction. She'd known him for less than a year, but that year had been the first in her life when she had felt protected. Kelsier was dead. She, like the rest of the world, had to live without him. I know you were hurt when you fought those Alamancers the other night. It would be really nice for my psyche if I knew someone was with you.
A Condra's no bodyguard.
I know, but they're incredibly loyal. I've never heard of one breaking contract. He'll watch out for you. I worry about you, Vin. You wonder why I stay up so late scribbling at my proposals? I can't sleep knowing that you might be out there fighting, or worse, lying somewhere in a street dying because nobody was there to help you. And now, it's important to note here, the way he says contract, he says, I've never heard of one breaking contract, and there's a capital C. But earlier, Orasor and Vin refer to it as the contract. So just
Mm-hmm.
something to note there.
Okay. Did it make you feel like there's some sort of ritual involved with contract, or it's just something to note? Like, what do you know what you're noting there?
Breaking contract invokes to me something more than just something on paper and a payment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So, anyway, I can't sleep knowing that you might be out there fighting, or worse, lying somewhere in a street dying because nobody was there to help you.
I take Orasur with me sometimes.
Yes, but I know you find excuses to leave him behind. Kelsier bought you the services of an incredibly valuable servant. I can't understand why you work so hard to avoid him.
Elend, he ate Kelsier.
So? Kelsier was already dead. Besides, he's the one who gave that order. Okay. Oh, I'm so ambivalent on that line. On one hand, yes, Elend is 100% correct here.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he was very blunt in how he said that.
Yeah, exactly. So she and she closes her eyes when she says he ate Kelsier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this is a real problem for her. But maybe they've had this conversation several times. That's why he can be that blunt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't trust that thing, Elend. The creature is unnatural.
I know. My father always kept a Chondra, but Orasor is something at least. Please, promise me you'll take him with you.
All right, but I don't think he's going to like the arrangement much either. He and I didn't get along very well, even when he was playing Renault and I was his niece.
He'll hold to his contract, and that's what's important.
He holds to the contract, but only grudgingly. I swear that he enjoys frustrating me.
Then Chondra are excellent servants. They don't do things like that.
No, Elend. Sazed was an excellent servant. He enjoyed being with people, helping them. I never felt that he resented me. Orasur may do everything I command, but he doesn't like me. He never has. I can tell. So yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Okay, yes. So he doesn't like her, she doesn't like him, but it seems like they don't like each other because they don't like each other.
Right.
Like nobody wants to like nobody wants to yield, so they're gonna stay not liking each other. Like he knows that she is uncomfortable with him, and therefore he doesn't like her, or he knows something else about her, and that's what he doesn't like about her.
Hmm.
Yeah. Considering
But
that you thought he was the thing, he was the thing that, not the thing, the something that stabbed one of the
Fennec?
guys. Yeah, Fennec. So I mean, if
Yeah.
he's like an ancient dude, and he knows something and suspects something about Vin and therefore resents her for it.
Now, all that said, I no longer think that he's the thing that
Mm.
stabbed Fennec. I now think it was one of those weird mist things.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say Oris in the theory log, which is mine. I know it's mine. Orasur equals ancient and knows something, and that's why he doesn't like Vin.
All right.
Because she, I don't know. It would be, look. It's plausible that he just doesn't like her because she's uncomfortable with him, but she says that she can tell something about him, and she's very perceptive that way and sensitive. So I'm like, maybe she's onto something.
True. She does have good instincts.
So I'm trusting Vin on it. Like I don't see anything, but I'm like, well, Vin sees it, so maybe. Although it's frustrating, I'm just like, could we just get along? And also her saying it's unnatural. It's like, Vin, you're an Elemencer. What is natural in a world with elements?
And it's this part of the chapter, by the way, where I feel very much like they're talking to each other, but not really listening to each other.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, but also it also makes sense that they're talking past each other because they've had these conversations so many times. They know each other's scripts.
True. There is a little bit of that as well, yeah.
Okay.
And I love, yes, Sazed was an excellent servant. That's great.
Yeah. That's what she thinks of. She doesn't think lowly of servants. It's not because he's serving her that she doesn't like him. It's something about him.
Right. Ellen sighed, rubbing her shoulder. Don't you think you might be a little irrational? There's no real reason to hate him so.
Oh? Just like there's no reason you shouldn't get along with Dachshund.
Elend hesitated, then he sighed. I guess you have a point. He continued to rub Vin's shoulder as he stared upward toward the ceiling, contemplative.
What?
I'm not doing a very good job of this, am I?
Don't be foolish. You're a wonderful king.
I might be a passable king, Vin, but I'm not him.
Who?
Kelsier.
Ellen, nobody expects you to be Kelsier.
Oh? That's why Dachshund doesn't like me. He hates noblemen. It's obvious in the way that he talks, the way he acts. I don't know that I blame him, considering the life he's known. Regardless, he doesn't think I should be king. He thinks a Ska should be in my place, or even better, Kelsier. They all think that. Yes! Yay! It's not just me!
Okay, yeah, exactly. So what do we do about it, Elend? But he's like, nah,
They
I'm
get
still the
married.
best.
That's what they do about it. Sorry.
They get married. I don't know if the marriage would please Dachshund, but it would make it better. It would be a little bit better at least, and then because then they can at least say, "Hey, look, here's a queen." You know, like they
Yeah.
didn't have that before. They had the single ruler guy. That's nonsense, Elend.
Really? And if Kelsier still lived, would I be king? Vin hesitated to reply. You see? They accept me, the people, the merchants, even the noblemen. But in the back of their minds, they wish they had Kelsier instead.
I don't wish that.
Don't you? Vin frowned. Then she sat up, turning so that she was kneeling over Elend in the reclined chair, their faces inches apart.
Don't you ever wonder that, Elend. Kelsier was my teacher, but I didn't love him. Not like I love you.
Elend stared into her eyes, then nodded. Vin kissed him, deeply, then snuggled down beside him again. Why not?
Well, he was old, for one thing.
I seem to recall you making fun of my age as well.
That's different. You're only a few years older than me. Kelsier was ancient.
Vin, 38 is not ancient.
Close enough.
Elend chuckled again, but she could tell that he wasn't satisfied. Why had she chosen Elend rather than Kelsier? Kelsier had been the visionary, the hero, the Mistborn. It's interesting. I mean, I had never considered the two as potential romantic partners, because for me, there was always that father-daughter dynamic.
Yeah. I can see, like, it was never an option. It feels like it was never an option.
He was so hung up on Mare.
Yeah, and he's not. Ew, no. But so it wasn't an option for him. He was not interested in that way in any case. We know that. Let's not put that on him. But from a young girl's perspective, the way that she said, like, he was the Mistborn and he's very cool, it makes sense that she should go for him and or have a crush on him. That's what I mean, like a crush, in terms of this is the unattainable older man that you just have a crush on. That's what she should have felt. She is wondering why that didn't occur, but they just fell into that father-daughter dynamic immediately. And it is quite funny that she says why she's wondering why she'd chosen Elend and not Kelsier. It's like, oh, you don't choose. That's not how easy it is. You don't choose who you fall for. But
yep.
Yeah, continue.
And whatever
it's
you
also, think,
yeah. And it's also noteworthy. She doesn't think of him or articulate a thought about him as a father figure in this section.
No.
Either. So.
So he was an option to her. He was an option somehow.
Apparently.
Yeah, but it just, yeah. Anyway, I'm just, there is no, at least there's nothing from Kelsier. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Kelsier was a great man.
Finn said quietly as Elend began to stroke her hair. The young love. I can't with it. No, it's sweet. Cute. It's sweet.
But there were things about him, Elend. Frightening things. He was intense, reckless, even a little bit cruel, unforgiving. He'd slaughter people without guilt or concern, just because they upheld the final empire or worked for the Lord Ruler. I could love him as a teacher and a friend, but I don't think I could ever not really love a man like that. I don't blame him. He was of the streets like me. When you struggle so hard for life, you grow strong, but you can grow harsh too. His fault or not, Kelsier reminded me too much of men I knew when I was younger. Kel was a far better person than they. He really could be kind, and he did sacrifice his life for the Scar. However, he was just so hard.
So, beautiful monologue. Very nihilistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's when she says he reminded her of men she knew growing up. My mind went to Cammon, and I thought, Vin, Kelsier and Cammon are nothing alike.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's, what about when I think of men she grew up with, I think of her brother. She's got some weird feelings about that as well, because she loved her brother but also was absolutely abused by him. And yeah,
But
no,
even that,
he
I don't.
yes.
Yeah.
What you're saying is they are so, like, remember how we saw her react to how Kelsier runs his crew and all of that. It was
Yeah.
absolutely new to her. He was completely different to the people she grew up with. Yes, he was tough. Okay, yes, okay. She's brought up the fact that he could be cruel and like
And she,
merciless.
yeah, and she was not there for the dark Kelsier chapter in the Argui Caverns.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much darkness she actually saw. And this feels like there are some truths in here, but it still just feels like a weird misread.
Yeah, it feels like a nihilistic, like you said, like it's not entirely false, but it's definitely focusing on the negative a bit more than is fair, I would say.
Yeah. Revisionist history.
Yeah, and also maybe she's also a bit so while she's nihilistic about Calcio, or pessimistic about it, she's also maybe a bit naive about Ellen. It's like, oh, Ellen is absolutely perfect. Ellen's soft. Ellen is kind. Ellen is everything that Calcio isn't. And it's like, well, yeah, Ellen's also much younger than Calcio. He's been through much less, far less. So yeah, let's think about that, Vin.
She closed her eyes, feeling Ellen's warmth.
You, Ellen Venture, are a good man. A truly good man.
Good men don't become legends.
Good men don't need to become legends. They just do what's right anyway.
Yours says just do instead of simply do?
Yeah.
Interesting. I like simply more.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Ellen smiled. Then he kissed the top of her head and leaned back. They lay there for a time in a room warm with sunlight, relaxing. He saved my life once.
Who? Calcia?
Ellen nodded. And that day after Spook and Orasur were captured, the day Kelsier died, there was a battle in the square when Ham and some soldiers tried to free the captives.
I was there, hiding with Breeze and Dox in one of the alleyways.
Really? Because I came looking for you. I thought that they'd arrested you alongside your uncle, Orasur. I tried to get to the cages to rescue you.
You did what, Ellen? It was a battlefield in that square. There was an Inquisitor there, for the Lord Ruler's sake.
I know. See, that Inquisitor is the one who tried to kill me. It had its axe raised and everything. And then Kelsier was there. He smashed into the Inquisitor, throwing it to the ground.
Probably just a coincidence.
No. He meant it, Vin. He looked at me while he struggled with the Inquisitor, and I saw it in his eyes. I've always wondered about that moment. Everyone tells me that Kelsier hated the nobility even more than Dox does.
He started to change a little bit at the end, I think.
Change enough that he'd risk himself to protect a random nobleman?
He knew that I loved you. I guess in the end that proved stronger than his hatred.
I didn't realize. He trailed off as Vin turned, hearing something. Footsteps approaching. She sat up, and a second later, Ham poked his head into the room. He stopped short when he saw Vin sitting in Ellen's lap. Man alive, this chapter just does not end.
But hold on, before we get into that. So initially I was like, whoa, how have they not spoken about this? The fact that Kelsier had saved Ellen's life before.
Good,
Do you have
good
answers
question.
for
What
that?
I thought. I don't have
What were
answers.
yours?
I remember thinking very specifically, how have they not talked about this before?
Yeah, it's been a year. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, because he doesn't want to tell her that he was there, because she'll be angry and, I don't know, just have that reaction, I suppose. But they did just get over it quite quickly. And it just never came up. Like, how do you say, hey, by the way, one time, you know what happened? So it's just that it's never come up. I can put it together that because of just the way that it came up now, It's like, oh, well, you know what? Might as well just talk about it now. And the way that I remember it is he actually said the Vin is okay, or
Yes. She's
he
fine.
yeah, and he told Ellen to run. So it wasn't just about in his eyes. And if I'm not mistaken, your book had the same thing as mine. So it wasn't like there was one edition where he didn't speak and one where he did. So maybe just he didn't hear him, or he's just not remembering it properly. But yeah, he did literally speak to Ellen. But either way, the outcome is the same, that we know that he did it because of Vin. But that is still a big change. The fact that it could, that him caring for her, or, well, yeah, him caring for her overcame that hatred. That's still a big character point that we pointed out in the last book.
Well said.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry.
No, wait.
Ham poked his head back in and Vin turned to Elend.
I almost forgot why I came looking for you in the first place. I got a new package from Tyrion today.
Another one? Vin, when are you going to give this up?
I can't afford to.
It can't be all that important, can it? I mean, if everybody's forgotten what that last medal does, then it must not be very powerful. Stupid Elend. Bad Elend. Bad.
Stupid Ellen. Like, oh, okay, just leave it. Oh my god, Ellen. You know what? He's too busy focused on his proposals and shit. Either that, or it was so amazingly powerful that the ministry worked very hard to keep it a secret.
Good Vin. Smart
Clever
Vin.
Vin. Yes.
Learn something from her, Elend. She stood, then took the pouch and thin bar out of her pocket. She handed the bar to Elend, who sat up in his plush chair. Silvery and reflective, the metal, like the aluminum from which it was made, felt too light to be real. Any Allomancer who accidentally burned aluminum had their other metal reserves stripped away from them, leaving them powerless. That's what that does.
Yes, that's what it was. That's what the metal was. Because we had people in the comments like, do you have any theories about what it is? It's like, a metal. And now we know. That's the metal.
Aluminum.
And I guess I have to call it aluminum because that's how it's spelt here. But, you know.
Is aluminium spelled I-U-M?
It's, yeah,
I thought
we have
interesting.
aluminium has an I in it. Definitely. It's always had it for me. Let me just check.
I thought it was just accent.
No. Yeah, you spell it with an I. Yeah.
Interesting.
So he spelled it aluminum, so he's just like, this is how we're going to call it, okay? This is how we're going to say it. So screw you and your English sensibilities. Sorry.
Listen, if we're here mispronouncing atium.
Yeah, exactly. And Cameron and and all of it. Yep. So
aluminum had been kept secret by the Steel Ministry. Vin had only found out about it the night she'd been captured by the Inquisitors, the same night she'd killed the Lord Ruler. They had never been able to figure out the proper allomantic alloy of aluminum. Allomantic metals always came in pairs: iron and steel, tin and pewter, copper and bronze, zinc and brass, aluminum and something. Something powerful, hopefully. Her atium was gone. She needed an edge. Ellen sighed, handing back the bar. The last time you tried to burn one of those, it left you sick for 2 days, Vin. I was terrified.
It can't kill me. Kelsier promised that burning a bad alloy would only make me sick.
Even Kelsier was wrong on occasion, Vin. Didn't you say that he misunderstood how bronze worked? His concern was so genuine that Vin felt herself being persuaded, but...
When that army attacks, Enend is going to die.
The city's ska might survive. No ruler would be foolish enough to slaughter the people of such a productive city, but the king would certainly be killed. She couldn't fight off an entire army, and she could do little to help with preparations. She did know allomancy. The better she got at it, the better she'd be able to protect the man she loved.
I have to try, Elend. Club says that Straff won't attack for a few days. He'll need that long to rest his men from the march and scout the city for the attack. That means I can't wait. If this metal does make me sick, I'll be better in time to fight. But only if I try now.
Interesting. It says scout the city to attack. Mine says scout the city's defenses.
Yeah, mine says scout the city for attack.
Interesting. There are a lot of changes in this one.
Yeah, it's a lot. I wonder if it's going to be like all throughout the book, or if it's just this chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been the one with the biggest changes so far. So
Yeah. Ellen's face grew grim, but he did not forbid her. He had learned better than that. Instead, he stood. Ham, you think this is a good idea? Ham nodded. He was a warrior. To him, her gamble would make sense. She'd asked him to stay because she'd need someone to carry her back to her bed should this go wrong. All right. Vin climbed into the chair, sat back, then took a pinch of the Duralumin dust and swallowed it. She closed her eyes and felt at her allomantic reserves. The common 8 were all there, well stocked. She didn't have any atium or gold, nor did she have the alloy of the 2. Even if she'd had atium, it was too precious to use except in an emergency, and the other 2 metals had only marginal usefulness. A new reserve appeared, exactly as one had the 4 times before. Each time she'd burned an aluminum alloy, she'd immediately felt a blinding headache.
you'd think I'd have learned.
Gritting her teeth, she reached inside and burned the new alloy. Nothing happened. Whoa! It worked!
Yeah, that it worked. That's what I also went. I was like, wait, she's not having a headache. Hello, that's a big change. It's big change. Something has happened.
Yup. And just remember when the 11th metal, she thought
Yes.
nothing happened, but then...
And she saw stuff. But yeah.
Exactly. So just because nothing's happening doesn't mean nothing is happening.
Yeah,
Hopefully
exactly.
Vin is... Yeah. And hopefully Vin is smart enough to consider that.
Yeah, she needs to figure out what it's doing to
Yeah.
be definitive, to be sure that, okay, nothing really is happening. We need to figure out ways to figure out that nothing is happening, okay? But
Yeah.
I feel like we'll figure it out. We'll get there, okay?
Yeah, we'll get there because we're gonna do a little bit of math. Talk about what we predict this is going to do, but let's just get a skosh farther.
Mhm.
Have you tried it yet? Vin nodded slowly.
No headache, but I'm not sure if the alloy is doing anything or not.
But it's burning? Ham asked. Vin nodded. She felt the familiar warmth from within, the tiny fire that told her that a metal was burning. She tried moving about a bit, but couldn't distinguish any change to her physical self. Finally, she looked up and shrugged. Ham frowned. If it didn't make you sick, then you found the right alloy. Each metal only has one valid alloy.
Or that's what we've always been told.
Ooh, there's no or in mine. It's just, that's what we've always been told.
Hmm.
What alloy was this?
Aluminum and copper.
Okay, let's take it here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Copper hides allomancy.
Mm-hmm.
Noteworthy that we had the whole bronze earring discussion earlier, so there could be something contrasting going on here. But okay, so copper hides allomancy, and aluminum removes removes reserves. So those are both internal pulling metals, right?
Pulling.
Or meaning what?
Meaning it has an effect on
The self.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it would not make sense then if this were to grant power instead of taking away allomantic powers, it wouldn't grant allomantic powers, would it?
Yeah, I'm not thinking so. Like, immediately what I thought about with is I wasn't thinking about the copper part of it. I was thinking about aluminum in that it takes away the reserves, so maybe it kind of magnifies. So it would be like the opposite of this. That's what I'm trying to think is like it magnifies the reserves, if you know what I'm saying. It does like the opposite. But yeah, I don't think that's how it works, right? You don't just have the opposites. It's not just pushing and pulling, right?
I don't think so.
Because yeah, if you have what would it's an internal metal because it affects you. I'm trying to do the theory here without looking. It's internal. It affects you when you burn aluminium by itself. Now, when you use the alloy, doesn't that do the opposite? Isn't an alloy supposed to be the opposite?
I think so. So then it would make it an external metal, which
Yes.
I think is why I think Or at
You
least
can
why I
grant it.
thought maybe it grants
Yeah.
allomantic powers.
Yeah, it would need to be. I'm thinking you're on a good theory
Or
there. Yeah.
Or maybe it does. Maybe like it wouldn't give Elend the ability to cast allomantic powers, but maybe it could be like a false beacon, the way that like if you're burning copper, that sends if you're burning iron or steel, that sends a beacon to folks who can sense allomancy. Maybe Duralumin can create a false beacon to trick people about what type of allomancy is being used.
Yeah, it's something. I think her look, the fact that she's trying it out here is fine. She needs him, but if it does work, she needs another Mistborn to be experimenting with her.
Oh yeah. Where's Marsh? He's a
Yeah.
Mistborn basically now because he's an
Yeah.
Inquisitor, right?
Exactly. They need to figure that out. But we see now that they're setting up for some sort of sparring. So I feel like that could be a mechanism for revealing what this does.
True.
Yeah. Like during the fight or during the practice, Vin will see the effects of this new metal.
Any other predictions regarding Duralumin before we move on?
No, just that there will be that mechanism will be that they're doing the sparring. That's it.
Cool.
That's how they'll find out. But I don't know what they'll find out. I have no. And yeah, yours further?
Nope.
Okay.
Interesting. You don't feel anything at all? Vin shook her head. You'll have to practice some more.
Looks like I'm lucky,
Vin said, extinguishing the Duralumin.
Tyrion came up with 40 different alloys he thought we could try, once we had enough aluminium. This was only the 5th.
40? I wasn't aware that there were so many metals you could make an alloy from.
You don't have to have 2 metals to make an alloy. Just 1 metal and something else. Look at steel. It's iron and carbon.
40? And you would have tried them all?
Seemed like a good place to start.
Elend looked concerned at that thought, but didn't say anything further. Instead, he turned to Ham. Anyway, Ham, was there something you wanted to see us about? Nothing important. I wanted to see if Vin was up for some sparring. That army has me feeling antsy, and I figure Vin could still use some practice with the staff.
Sure, why not?
You want to come, El? Get in some practice? And face one of you two? I've got my royal dignity to think of. Vin frowned slightly, looking up at him.
You really should practice more, Elend. You barely know how to hold a sword, and you're terrible with the dueling cape.
Now why would I worry about that when I have you to protect me? Vin's concern deepened.
We can't always be around you, Elend. I'd worry a lot less if you were better at defending yourself.
He smiled and pulled her to her feet. I'll get to it eventually, I promise, but not today. I've got too much to think about right now. How about if I come watch you two? Perhaps I'll pick up something by observation, which is, by the way, the preferable method of weapons training, since it doesn't involve me getting beaten up by a girl. Vin sighed, but didn't press the point further. Again, that's more of them just like listening, but not really listening to each other,
just like,
I think.
Yeah, not responding properly because they're just not listening, yeah. But for me, just that just sets up this, he's going to watch them. So if your theory is true, then he can get powers or something. So it's all set up quite neatly, which makes me think I'm seeing too much.
Yeah. Look, I have faith that Vin is smart enough to be like, okay, there are a bunch of things this magic could be. How do I figure it out? I'm going to test it in front of different allomancers. I'm going to have allomancers test things on me while I'm burning it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Because that's a characteristic of Vin. She tries things.
But I'm hoping that she doesn't just dismiss this as, oh, well, we were wrong about, because Ham's like, look, then that's the alloy. That's it.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, well, maybe we're wrong about it. It's like, no, well, you need to test that theory as well. You can't just decide that you're wrong about it. You need to test it. So she does need to further test this metal, this alloy.
Yep. Well, that was a long chapter. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. And Let's see if Orosur can be a good boy.
Yeah, best doggo.
Yeah.
If you haven't subscribed to that darn kitty, go and do so. She streams panel shows on Thursdays where I get to hang out with her more. And she does diagram streams or gaming streams or really whatever suits her fancy on other days.
Yeah. And don't forget to like this video, seeing as you've come this far, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Also, there's a Discord in my channel description. Come and join. Hang out with us. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.